Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining TheBrain 202, a special holiday edition of TheBrain 202 that we're holding today. We're going to cover all of the advanced topics that we don't get a chance to cover in the Brain 101 classes that we hold just about every week. So we're assuming today that you've taken the Brain 101, you understand the basics behind the brain software, creating thoughts, adding content to those thoughts, whether it's web pages, files, notes. And today we're taking it to the next level. We're going to be talking about importing and exporting data into and out of your brain. We're going to talk about using thought types and tags, all with a special holiday twist. You can see I've got my elf hat on. I've got my brain open to the Christmas thought, and so I'm ready to start adding and manipulating some content in here. As I mentioned earlier, the GoToMeeting question panel is open, and I'm joined today by Chase Ingersoll. He's going to be answering questions in the GoToMeeting question panel and join me for the QA at the end of the webinar today. I'm also joined by my friend, the elf on a shelf, who's around here somewhere. I've got my elf hat on, and we're ready to go ahead and get started. So I've got my brain open right now, as you can see on the screen, and I've navigated down to the Christmas thought. So this is my real brain. This is the brain that I use on a daily basis for keeping track of my family, my hobbies, my interests and activities. I sometimes click around in this brain on my Brain 101 classes, but today I'm actually going to go in and clean up a few areas of this particular brain and talk about some more advanced features of the application. So before I get started, of course, it is a holiday themed Brain 202. So I want the brain, my digital brain, to reflect my own holiday festive mood. So I'm simply going to change the wallpaper in my brain. It's a very basic feature of the Brain application, but one that really has a powerful effect and can really have an advantage in when you're creating your brains to help you visually quickly identify all of the different brain databases that you may be using. So I'm simply going to right click on the background and go into the brain theme. Now we've got built-in brain themes within the brain. So you can click around and manipulate different brains or different wallpapers, different sort of pre-built themes within the application. And you can customize this. Once you've made a few modifications, you can actually save these as your own custom theme. And I've done just that with my Seafoam theme. So all I really want to do right now is change the wallpaper. I'm going to click on Options, and I'm going to select, and actually it remembered the last time I was here, I went to my wallpaper directory, and I've got a nice little sort of holiday pine cone theme wallpaper. I simply apply that to the background, and a nice festive wallpaper gets me into the holiday spirit. And it's an easy change. I'll come back and change this in the new year. I'll change it in the summertime. If you know me, you know that I manipulate and change the wallpaper within my brain quite often to reflect the season or my mood or the subject matter of the brain database. You can also change the background of the notes as well. There's a button in the content area on the toolbar that allows you to manipulate edit the notes style. So the default is what we call the modern. This is what you'll see when you first launch and install the Brain. And of course, we can click down and select any number of these different themes. If I want a real Christmassy theme, I might scroll all the way down to the fun area. And that's some interesting text, but let's change the background. So the background color is going to be a really light green. And, oh, that's the background behind the note. The actual note is the page color. So that is going to be my light green. And then the text could be, we'll go to text and we'll change this to a nice light red. That doesn't work so well. There we go. Now we're starting to get into that festive holiday sort of green and red color tone. And of course, if this is not what I'm interested in seeing, here, I'll apply this. If it's a little too much, here I've got green and blue and red going on. I can always go right back in and roll back, and I'll do that really quickly. I'm just going to go back to the modern style. So we'll apply that. So that will be the wallpaper. Actually, my favorite, I'm going to click one more time, go down. You can see I run my brain in what we call dark mode. It's easy on my eyes in the evening, and I typically put my brain on nocturne. So that works great for me. Still has the festive wallpaper and the color coding that I want. So now let's jump right ahead and get into some more advanced features of the brain application. I'm going to talk first about importing into the brain. Now, once again, those of you that have joined the Brain 101, seen our webinars in the past, or watched our tutorial videos know all about creating thoughts, thought by thought, one click at a time. So if I scroll down into my interests area, and I'm going to go into holidays, and I'm really going to stay focused in sort of the Christmassy area of my brain, and I'm going to create a new thought. And I actually have an import that I want to do. My son recently wrote a report on A Christmas Carol for school. And so I'm going to just create a new thought called Book Report. And I asked him if it would be okay. I just made a little copy of a folder that he actually put together. So this particular folder, if you open it up, you can see it's got adaptations of A Christmas Carol, the background characters. So this is all the material that he used to put his final review, his book review together. Information about Charles Dickens, as you can see, adaptations. We go into the different links to different movies of A Christmas Carol. One particular favorite is Scrooged with Bill Murray, so that's got its own folder. So this is a really great directory, a lot of valuable information that I want to import into the brain. Now, once again, got a holiday themed topic going on today, but this could be a folder of any type of data, a project that you're working on. And this is one of the most common import questions that we get. Can folders or zip files be imported into the brain? And they certainly can. And the basic rule that you need to be aware of is that folders will become thoughts and files will be attachments to those thoughts. But you can take that one step further. If you know the basics behind the brain, such as your notes are formatted using Markdown. So if you have .md files or even a .txt file, that will be editable within the notes area of the brain. And I think here, let's place special attention in adaptations. There, I've got a file specifically named notes.md. So that's a markdown file. And because I named the file notes, that's going to be my note for this particular thought. It could, if it's a Word document, it'll be an attachment, but a text document can load up in the content area as well, an MD file. And if it's named notes, it'll be the default note for that thought. Okay, so we're going to take a close look at this adaptations once we get this import done. So I've created my new thought for my holiday book report, and I'm going to click on File and Import. And here you can see I won't have time to import all of these different file types today, but I'm going to start with folders, and I'm going to do one more here in just a moment as well. So I'll select the folder. Out on my desktop is a folder called A Christmas Carol. I'll say OK. And notice I've got these two options. I can either create this as a new brain or import it into my existing brain. Let me tell you, these elf hats keep you nice and warm. So I'm going to take that off now. And so I'm going to import into the existing brain, and it's going to connect this child thought, starting as a child thought, to the current active thought. I'll select import, and there's just a confirmation window. I'll import. And as you can see, it created a new child thought called A Christmas Carol. That was the folder that I imported. And all of my subfolders down below are thoughts. So there's the review directory, the Word document on Charles Dickens added as an attachment to this particular thought. The characters. Now in the characters directory was a series of pictures of many of the different characters within the play. And notice that when you've got images, as attachments for a particular thought, I get this nice scrolling feature. So I can click through and look at each of the different characters. in Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol. And that, once again, was just simply a directory. Here's characters. Those are all the 6 different images, but I could scroll through those now here in the content area of my brain. And that adaptations area, once again, the videos, or not the video, I'm not sure what it is. It looks like a Christmas Carol. That's launching in another window. I've got it set to launch my web pages in their default application. So there it just launches these in a new window. But my note that I had as attached as an MD in that directory becomes my note for this particular thought. I had a subfolder within that folder, Scrooge, so that launches here. I've got a link to the Scrooge URL, and there was another subdirectory, Bill Murray, and there was a text document about Bill Murray, and there it loads up right in the content window. Not all the same features as you have in a Markdown document, but once again, if I have more information, I can continue on editing within that text document that's associated with the thought in the brain. Close that content and navigate back up to my Christmas thought. So we've imported a folder with a lot of content into the brain. Let's also import an Excel spreadsheet. Now this process is a little bit different. For an Excel spreadsheet, the easiest way to get this content into the brain is to actually launch the file. So here I've opened up the file, and this is just sort of an Excel spreadsheet that I found online, and I reformatted it so that it's proper formatting for importing into the brain. I'll go through that in just a moment. But regardless, it's an outline of different types of Christmas trees that you can have. So we've got firs, pines, spruce, and cedar. And notice it is cell delineated in the same file, and I converted this to a text document. I won't import both just for a matter of time, but you can see here's the same file as the text document, and it's tab delineated. So we've, on the first line, types of Christmas trees, and then I come down one line and tab over firs, come down one line, tab over noble firs. So the same is here in the Excel spreadsheet. This is what a properly formatted Excel spreadsheet looks like that can be imported into the brain. And it's basically the next row down and one column over becomes a new child thought. So types of trees, firs, pine, spruce, and cedar. The next line, or the next column rather, are tree names. Notice down below under noble fir, we've got a dash. When you enter a dash or start with a dash, you are actually signifying that this is going to be a note for the thought right up above. Now in Excel, you need to do a space and a dash. If it's a Word document or just a plain text document, it can go just straight to the dash. You don't need the space first. The plus sign that you see here where my mouse is moving around is signifying that this is an attachment. So this is a web page that's going to be attached to Fraser Fir. I also have the pipe symbol. The pipe symbol means it's going to be a, when you hover over that particular thought, you're going to see that a Fraser Fir is Laura's favorite. It's a little identifier for the note. Balsam also, you can see the pipe symbol, fragrant. So that's just a label on the note. So, and we've got multiple generations of thoughts all the way down. So let's go ahead and copy this. Oh, here's a new symbol as well. This pound sign is basically telling the outline that this thought already exists. So now I'm linking to an existing thought. So I added this onto the document, my own favorite Christmas trees, red cedar and Fraser Fir. So let's go ahead and see what this looks like when we import it into the brain. I'm just gonna grab a cell and drag to make sure I get it all, right click and copy. So I have this information on my clipboard, and under Christmas, I'm gonna put a thought for trees. I could just paste here, but regardless, I'll first have an intervening thought, trees. Now I can right click and notice that the brain recognizes I've got a valid outline on my clipboard. So I can paste this text outline as thoughts within the brain, and I'll select that option. And favorites, yes, I do want to copy favorites. That's fun. No, I'll skip. It's notifying me that there's already a thought named favorites. So I'll make a copy of my favorites thought. So that's very helpful too. I didn't realize that it would recognize some of those thoughts already exist. Those thought names exist within my brain. So here we've pasted it in, the outline from the Excel spreadsheet, types of Christmas trees. I've got my cedar, my favorites, my firs, pines, and spruce. If I look at firs, I think Fraser fir had all that content. It's Laura's favorite, so I get that with the thought label when I hover over that thought. That was the pipe symbol. The web page is attached. I can click and it's going to launch that web content right there in the Brain's built-in browser. And I've got my note for that particular thought. And also, let's see, Fraser fir, I thought it was supposed to show up under favorites. I don't think I spelled it correctly. There's the red cedar that shows up under both categories. So I think I spelled Fraser fir incorrectly in the note. It has to match the exact spelling for it to work properly. And that's the perfect example. I think I spelled one with a Z and one with an S. But there's the red cedar. So it falls both under cedar trees as well as one of my favorites. So another great way to import data into the brain. And just for a matter of time, I won't import it again, but again, this is what it would look like if it was in a plain text document with just a tab delineated list. So a couple of great ways to import existing data into a brain to really get a brain up and running quickly with a project that you're working on or an outline you've put together for a book you're reviewing or a class you're teaching, whatever the case may be. So now that we've got this content into the brain, let's start talking a little bit about exporting. And we can export into many different formats. You can grab a grouping of thoughts and export these thoughts into an outline, a document. I'm actually going to export a section of thoughts into another brain because I want to start talking about working with multiple brains. So I'm going to start with my Christmas thought. And let's say I've got a lot of content. I actually do have a lot of content in this area of my brain. But let's say I wanted to create my own Christmas brain. I want to remove these thoughts from my master brain and create a smaller subset of thoughts with just the topic of holidays or Christmas. So I'm going to control click on the Christmas thought. If you are on a Mac, this is a command click. And now we're going to start talking about selecting thoughts and manipulating large groups of thoughts within your brain at one time. You know, there's a lot that you can do with the brain, once again, that we cover in Brain 101, changing the thought type of a thought, changing the location of a thought. But you can also do these changes in mass to large groups of thoughts. So in order to build this list, there are several different ways to do it. Again, I'm on a Windows machine today, so I'm control clicking. Mac is command click. But if I control click on another thought, it will simply add that thought into my selected group. I can then right click and I can copy, I can forget, I can link, unlink thoughts from different areas. We're going to go through several of these options today. But also, if I control click a thought that's already selected, it removes that thought from the selection list. I can control click on a gate to add into the selection box all thoughts that are connected to that gate. So you can see they're all selected. If I specifically don't want my polar plunge thought, once again, just control click that one thought. So it's toggling, you're adding, subtracting. I can also control and drag a box around a group of thoughts to add them all into the selection box. So let's go ahead. I'm control clicking now. I want to have Christmas and I want all child thoughts of Christmas for 2 or 3 generations down. So you can see some of these thoughts, if I don't control click on anything, as we saw in trees, there's a lot of child thoughts. What if I want all of these thoughts, these subcategories to be added into the selection box? That could take a lot of navigating around and control clicking, right? There's a faster way. I go back to sort of my starting thought, the Christmas thought, and I click on edit, and I'm going to select related thoughts. Now I only want child thoughts. Let's say I want jump thoughts too, so thoughts off to the side, so it'll get past Christmases and those child thoughts as well. And we'll just go 5 generations down and say okay. And so you can see from this one thought, I have now added to my selection box 137 thoughts. So that would have taken a lot of time to navigate around and select one by one. But once again, if we go down to trees and types of trees and spruce trees, so 5 generations down, I will have added all of those to the selection box. Now that I have them here, I can manipulate these thoughts in mass. I can change all of their thought types all at once. I don't want to do that. I can add a tag to all of these thoughts. I do that quite often for large groups of thoughts. You can copy these as a text outline. So if you want to see how a text outline is properly formatted, go ahead and select some existing thoughts and copy those as a text outline and paste them into another document. In this case, I want to copy the actual thoughts. So I'm copying 137 thoughts onto my clipboard. And now I'm going to click on File and select to create a new brain. My new brain is going to be called Holiday. I'll say okay. Randomly selects one of the different themes once again in wallpaper, but I'm starting off with my holiday brain. And remember, I have those 137 thoughts all on my clipboard. So therefore I can right click and I can paste 137 thoughts into my holiday brain. This is a really, really great and useful feature, particularly if you've created a brain over time and maybe you started off with just one brain, all your thoughts in one brain, all of your content, but you've added to that brain financial information or information about clients and customers that you're working with. And now your colleagues at your office want a copy of your brain because there's some really helpful information in there. But some of that information is sensitive. Some of that information doesn't belong to your friends, colleagues, what have you. This is a great process where you can take a master brain and take a smaller subset of very selective thoughts. So you can go through and select thoughts one by one or crawl through the brain as I have here with the related thoughts feature. You grab the selection of thoughts, paste it into a smaller brain. Now with this brain, I can sync it to the cloud. I can zip it up and share it with a friend. So I can say File, back up to Brain Archive. My friends or colleagues use the brain as well. I can send them a BRZ file to extract, and they'll have all the information in their brain that I've selected the section of from my master brain. So just a really, really great feature to sort of break a brain up a little bit. You can also merge brains together. That's a very, very simple process. I'm not going to go through that step by step. It's quite simply making a BRZ and then importing it. So you saw earlier, I was importing well, we did an Excel spreadsheet, we imported a file and folder directory. If you go to File, Import, you can see that you can import a BRZ, a brain archive. And a brain archive is just simply a brain database that's zipped up into a single file. So if I want to create this brain as a BRZ that my family, maybe my wife wants to import my Christmas area into her brain, I can say File, back up to Brain Archive. So it zips up this entire brain. Now, since I'm sending it to someone else, I want to select this radio button. Allow anyone to restore this brain. That's a really nice safety feature built into the brain. So when you create your backups, if those backups are just for you, disaster recovery, and you want to be able to get back into your brain database as it existed on, December 15th, 2021, or zip up your brain, every year or month or what have you, and keep backups that only can be opened by you and your account information, then you would leave that first radio button selected. So I'm going to allow anyone to extract this copy of this brain. And so this is going out onto, let me change the location, and I'll put it on my desktop. and save and backup. There we go. So my brain was just backed up, and it's actually probably, of course, going to be on another monitor here. So let me get to this particular thought, or this, sorry, everything is a thought in my head. I've got to move a few windows around. There it is. So here's my holiday backup. There's the BRZ that can be imported into another brain. I can deliver that to anyone else that uses the brain. We'll be able to extract that brain and take a look at it as a local brain on their desktop. So let's move on. Let me check my brain notes down below, and I've got another brain open on another machine. I'll give you a little peek. There it is. That's just my outline for today's webinar. So we've talked about importing, we've talked about exporting. I also want to talk about mass deleting of thoughts, as well as linking thoughts from one brain to another. Since we're talking a little bit about working with multiple brains, I am a multiple brain user. You can see if I click on this little plus sign here, I get to my list of all available brains. I've got a thumbnail for all of my different brains. Please excuse all the goofy wallpapers. I really use that wallpaper feature to visually identify, what that content is in that particular brain. So I jump around from one brain to the next, and sometimes I even have the same brain open in multiple tabs. So I can be on different areas of my brain and jump back and forth. As you saw earlier, I've got another brain open on another monitor just so I can follow through my, my outline for today's webinar. So now I'd like to link from one brain to another. Let's say in my holiday brain that I just created, I also want to have a link to jump over into my Thanksgiving area. So I'm going to create a new child thought under holiday. Now, I don't think that I want to import all of that Thanksgiving data into this brain. I just want to link from one brain to the other. So in my default sort of master brain, here's my Thanksgiving thought where I keep track of recipes and things like that. That's going on for Thanksgiving. It's really just a lot of food in this area of my brain. But I'm going to right click, and I am going to copy the local thought URL. I sync my brain to the brain cloud. That gives me access to my brain online and from multiple devices and from my cell phone. So each individual thought within all of my different brains have their own URL, an online URL, so I can get to the web thought URL, or a local thought URL. So I'm going to copy the local thought URL of the Thanksgiving thought in my master brain, my primary brain, and I'm going to jump over to holiday. And now I'll right click, and I'm actually going to add as an attachment, I am going to paste the web link. It's local, but it's still considered a web link. And it attached a link here. I'm even going to close my other brain tab, so I only have this new holiday Thanksgiving or holiday brain open. And I'm going to launch this attachment, and the brain follows its instructions. It's going to launch the attachment in its native application. So that's the brain 12, and it takes me directly to the Thanksgiving thought. So that's how you can link from one brain to another. Now, since we talked earlier about sharing this brain with someone else, what's that going to look like for the other user? If they click on that link, they don't have a Thanksgiving brain. Maybe they do, but it has a different GUID, global unique ID. So it's going to launch, and it's just going to say the file could not be found that you're trying to activate. So that will not launch for the other user unless they have a copy of your master brain specifically with this Thanksgiving thought. Your brain itself has a GUID, a global unique ID, and each individual thought has its own GUID. So they have to match up in order for that link to work. It's pointing to this specific thought in this specific brain. So that's how we can link one thought to one another. Also, just on my notes, talking about selecting large groups of thoughts, that's another way that we can delete content out of the brain. So let's say I don't want to delete any, I even want to keep my outline of Spencer's book report. So let's say jump over to this brain, and let's say we want to delete in this brain all of the information about past Christmases. So I rarely, it's interesting that I'm choosing this because I rarely delete anything out of my brains. I archive them. And this is a great example. You can see I've been archiving Christmas thoughts for years. So if I want to see what I bought everyone for Christmas in 2020, I've got a thought of all that content. Or this is, yeah, 2020. We can go back to 2019 and I've got some checklists here. I wrote a list for each individual person and then links down below to what was purchased and so forth. So let's say I want to delete all of this content. Once again, I'm going to use that feature of control clicking, and I could control click thought by thought, or I can say edit, select related thoughts. And in this case, not jump word, just child word, just down for 5 generations is fine. I'll say okay. So there's 47 thoughts below this past Christmas thought. And I'm taking a little shortcut. I usually cover how to delete thoughts in Brain 101, how to forget thoughts. Now we're talking about deleting. The shortcut for deleting is simply to hold down the Shift key. So if I press Shift and then I right click in the selection box, I can mass delete a large group of thoughts that are not needed in this particular brain. Like I said, I don't normally delete thoughts, I archive them, but in this case, I'm going to go ahead and delete those thoughts, and they are permanently deleted from the brain. Now, the brain does keep track of changes and modifications that are going on. As soon as I close the brain, that information is completely gone. But there is an undo option. So I can click on edit, and here's my undo. It renamed attachments. That's all the pasting that happened just recently. But here I can, the last one was deleting multiple thoughts. I can still undo that. And you can always undo an action in the brain until the application is closed or until the application syncs to the brain cloud. Once the brain syncs to the brain cloud, it may be syncing to other devices. It's, the change you've made is rolled out to too many devices to then go back and delete. So it sort of clears the palette, clears the slate. Once the brain syncs, the undo sort of archive is wiped out. But right now, if I want to bring all those thoughts back, I still can edit, undo, and undo, delete. And there they all are. Those thoughts are all back once again. So now let's start talking about just cleaning up. Like I mentioned, I archive, I clean up my brain, I group things together and move them around. Even, about a month ago, I moved everything from my 2020 Christmas over to this thought. It's really just a checklist that I had. And I renamed everything else, but I wanted to archive. Here's what I purchased in 2020. So I've got that particular thought. Let's get back into my real brain now. So back into the Christmas thought, and here's where I keep track of gifts that I'm buying for family members and for friends and so forth, favorite web pages that I go to, gifts I found online. If there's, I've got a really good friend of mine, colleague, that grew up in Goshen, Indiana, and here's a t-shirt about a motorcycle company in Goshen, Indiana. So I'm purchasing this t-shirt. So I find things like that and I drop them into my brain, and then when it's time to do Christmas or holiday shopping, I come in and purchase things, check things off the list and take care of it. I've got a lot, Christmas is coming up, I've got a lot of work to do. There's gonna be a lot of time on Amazon tonight probably. But regardless, this area got a little bit messy. It's time to clean it up. So I'm gonna start with cleaning things up with thought types. Thought types are a really, really great feature, sort of a more advanced feature of the brain to categorize thoughts and sometimes group them together. You can see down below, it's kind of a hot mess, all of these. It's not too bad, but I need to read through each one by one to find out either who it's for and try and remember if I've purchased it or not and so forth. And I even have like Amazon and Target, REI. So I've got individual gifts mixed with actual stores where I'm going to be purchasing. Well, this is a pretty easy fix. If I right click on REI, I can set this as a thought type, and I already have a thought type for shopping site. So I keep track of different websites that I frequent where I buy things, whether it's parts for cars or bicycles or what have you. So REI is a shopping site. So I'm going to assign a thought type shopping site to REI. So is QVC. So I right click and I go to thought type, shopping site. And notice that my brain is grouping these together. If you right click in the background, you can arrange your thoughts by just alphabetically by name. I like to arrange mine by type, so it groups all of these similar thought types together. You can arrange thoughts by last activated, by date, by oldest activated, and so forth. So, but regardless, mine are arranged by thought type. So I've got a few more. There's Target, there's IKEA. Now I'm control clicking and just, oh, Amazon. This Amazon URL is probably an item. We'll find out here in just a bit. I think that's it. So now I've selected 3 more thoughts, and those are all. Let's set the thought type to shopping site. And so it simply groups those thoughts together. So you're going to see how this pays off here in just a moment. Now I'm going to create a new thought type. So I'm going to go to my thought type list, and I don't see a thought for things that I've purchased. So I'm going to create a new thought type called purchased. And we can color code, so all purchased thoughts will show up as green text. And we can give them an icon. So I'm going to select the stock icon, purchased. Let's look for money. So great, I have, is what all purchased thought types will look like. Let's create another thought type for not purchased, not. So not purchased will be red. We'll keep the color code, the background. That's a little too, there we go. And select the stock icon, not purchased. Do I have a stop sign? So I'm doing a search through the Brain's thought icon library. We've got 2,000 different, this will be fine, construction sign. We've got 2,000 different icons available. You can also, you may have noticed here, click and click once again. You can capture an image that you've got in the background on your desktop, sort of a Snagit-like feature. You can even choose a file, or if you've got something on your clipboard, you'll have an option to, paste here. That only shows up if there's an image on your clipboard. So there we've got our 2 different thought types. Let's create, and now if you look at our thought types, here's not purchased and there's purchased. They are side by side, but I want to group these together. So I'm going to create a new thought type called gifts. And that is a new thought type. And underneath gifts will be my not purchased and my purchased. So now take a look at how it nests those 2 thought types under its primary thought type, which is gifts. Just like for rebuilding an old VW bus, all the different categories I have fall under VW, favorites, and specifically favorite house sites where I'm doing shopping for house renovations and so forth. Sometimes I like to group those together. Very, very helpful. Now we can return, now that we've created those thought types, I'm going to go back to my Christmas gifts. And I'm going to quickly, binoculars, I got those. Baby Yoda, I don't have yet. Oven mitt, I've got. The cello box is not done yet. So I'm just selecting, I know off the top of my head, that one I haven't gotten yet. Mahjong is done. And not that. Trout net is done. The goggles are done. I don't know what that is. I'll have to revisit it. Oh, wheel and sprocket is done. Okay, so I think those are my gifts that I know that I've purchased so far. So I can right click, I've control click to select those. And now I can say, hey, make all of these thought types purchased. And now I'll clear that out. My other ones, Baby Yoda, don't have it. And here I can just control click and drag. I don't have those, don't have that. That looks good. I'm gonna right click and change those thought types to, sorry, there it is, not purchased. So if you recall what this area looked like when we first came, well, I can show you what it looked like. It looked a lot like, because I have this in the other brain, it looked like that. You know, there was no definition to what these were. I had to click and monitor and navigate around through each one. And now I can clearly see at first glance, I know what's purchased, what's not, and then places that I'm purchasing from. So I've got these different categories. And I can even take this one step further. I'm going to create a few sort of intervening thought types. So family, gifts for family, and then gifts for friends. And so under family, and now I can click and drag. I activate family as the active thought. Baby Yoda, that's for my kids. The cello box is for my kids. Griffin Tea, that's for someone else. Clipless pedals, vintage looking watch. I remember that now. That's for my dad. And don't know what that is yet. Maybe I'll create another. Oh, that's for Laura. And then if I go to, oh wait, let's go back to family. I want to scroll down a little further. There we go. So Disney Plus is for the kids, the Colorado hat. I know who that's for. TroutNet, once again, anything fishing or biking related is usually my family. There we go. Now the other category is, whoops, I've already created it, friends. So for friends, the t-shirts, the yard art, the artwork. I'm going to review that one later. Binoculars for a good friend, camping, and the Mahjong sets. There we go. So now we really quickly clean things up. If you recall what it looked like, there was just a slew of thoughts. And then here we can even say sites. And under sites, we'll go target REI. So a few different ways for you to sort of reorganize thoughts. And then this Amazon, remember, I don't know what that is yet. I don't recall. So we're going to open that up in a minute. I'm just going to make that a jump thought. That's sort of, I need to give that a little bit of attention. I haven't categorized yet, so I have it over there as a jump thought. I can find out very quickly what gifts I have bought for my family, what hasn't been purchased yet for my friends, have and have not purchased. If I need to do some purchasing online tonight, I'm going to go right to this Christmas gift sites area of my brain. And then I'm going to finally review this thought. It'll load up here in my, I'm not logged in, so it doesn't recognize me. So there it loads right up. Cooking knife, that is for my wife. So now we can go back into family, and there it is, not purchased, Amazon.com. There it is. So I've linked that in there. I can unlink it from Christmas gifts. And I did that really quickly. Hopefully you know this feature. If I just start typing in a thought name, so my son Spencer, I just start typing in Spencer, and all thoughts that contain the word Spencer show up in this thought window. That web page or that thought was called www.amazon. I didn't rename it. Whoops, let's Control Z, undo that. If I go back to family, this is the chef knife. There we go. So sometimes when you drag and drop a web page in, it just grabs the URL, in which case you just simply need to rename that thought. So we've imported data today. We've exported data. We have segmented brains into smaller topic-specific brains, and we've come in and you've all helped me really clean up my my holiday area in this particular batch of the brain. We talked about thought types. I want to really quickly talk about thought tags before I go into a couple of other advanced features that I'm really excited to share with you today. So first, thought tags. The big difference between thought types and thought tags is that you can assign multiple thought tags to a thought. So for example, under my family, this chef knife that I'm thinking about purchasing for Laura, that is something that is not purchased yet. It's a gift. The thought type is appropriate, but it may have different attributes. Maybe it's urgent that I purchase this, or maybe I'm still doing research, or maybe I want to also classify it as expensive. I can apply all of those thought types to this one, or excuse me, thought tags to this one thought. It's got one thought type. It's an unpurchased gift. So not purchased, and that falls under the gift category, but it has all these different attributes. So if I click to open up the thought properties display, I see a list of all of my tags. And I do have, like I said, this is my real brain. I do have priority levels. So back burner, medium priority, and top priority. So let's say this is a top priority item that I purchased this because the holiday is just a few days away. And then also, I've got sort of a ranking system that I like to create, 1 star versus 4 stars. I really like this particular brand and so forth. So I'm going to give that a 5-star rating. So this is one of my favorite. It's a 5-star item. I tag it as being favorite, and it's a top priority. If I want to find out what all of the top priority things that I need to do are in my entire brain, you can see this is it. I needed to purchase those binoculars. That we saw that thought earlier, so that's here. I need to finish my holiday cards. They're still not done. I've got a couple of different sourdough recipes that I'm testing over the holidays and signing up for some events and a weekend checklist. So those are all top priority items that I need to take care of in my life. And then I've got a medium priority and back burner priority. So it's really great that you can have these other classifications of topics within your brain to further identify and add greater context to the thoughts that you're creating. And then you can find those items really quickly. So I need to find all my top priority items or all my unfinished tasks and so forth. The star rating, 5 stars, are usually like museums that I like, projects that I'm working on and so forth. People often ask when they see this, why do you have a 1 star? If you don't like it, why is it even in your brain? That's a valid point. Sometimes I need to have things in my brain that I don't like. I don't like going to the dentist. There, I said it. And it's not because it's a bad dentist. It's just, it's one of my things. I don't like going to the dentist, but I still have to go to the dentist. So I need to keep a link to my, no offense to my dentist, Dr. Willis. And you can see I've got that linked right now as medium priority. I'm kind of overdue for a checkup. But I don't like it. So there it is in my brain. This is a triathlon I did one time, and I didn't feel that it was very well organized. I do triathlons with my kids from time to time, just junior little, running around different cities and stuff. It's a lot of fun. This is one I didn't like, and I want to remember not to sign up for this event again. It just wasn't managed very well, very disorganized. So those are some of the 1-star items that I don't have many, but I have a few there in my brain. And then finally, let's talk a little bit about, well, I've got 2 more topics if I've got time. Number 1, encrypting data within your brain. This question comes up a lot. And there are many different ways that you can do this to your brain data. We talked earlier about zipping up a brain and making sure that your brain data is secure in the brain zip or the BRZ. There's a little radio button. So once again, I say File, Backup to Brain Archive. All my brains will be backed up, and only me with my account info can extract that brain onto another machine with those BRZs. But what about individual files? You saw earlier, I clicked to an Amazon page. Now, granted, the browser didn't think I was a human, so it made me type in some letters there to log in. But when I logged in, I was actually logged into my account. The brain's built-in browser uses Chromium. So once you log into something, the brain is going to remember who you are and keep you logged in. And that's really great because you can point to links that are maybe they're files located in your Dropbox or Google Drive, and they're not shared with the world. You can log into those through the brain. And if you share your brain with someone else, when they get to that page, they are going to need to log in. And if they can't log in, your information that web page points to is secure. You can control who has access to files in Google Drive and Dropbox and so forth. And every file has a link, and those links can exist within your brain. But there's another way for even internal attachments. And I think for this one, I saw a Word document earlier. Oh, it was under book report. I've got my son's book report here, and here is his book report on Charles Dickens. You can see if I click and launch, once again, launch is in another window, but there is sort of with some graphics, sort of the book report as it's taking shape. Let's encrypt this file so that it is absolutely 100% secure within my brain. And to do that, I simply right click and select encrypt. You can do this for any internal attachment within the brain, Word document, PDF, spreadsheet, whatever the case may be. You have a prompt, and so you can write yourself a little prompt that's going to help you remember, and then the password. The password is case sensitive. The password, it has to be an exact match, and we can't stress this enough, so we even added a checkbox. Even at TheBrain, we can't look up the password that you created for a document. We can't access even your brain, even if you're syncing it to the Brain cloud. It's secure with your login information. So we always remind people, if you use this feature and you forget your password, don't come asking us for help. We cannot extract that information for you. It's absolutely secure. So make sure you have a good prompt is what I'm trying to say. So let's just say favorite Scrooge actor. And mine would be Bill Murray. So capital B-I-L-L Murray, I think is how he spells his name. And I'm confirming that only I have this information. So as soon as I click this encrypt, I better remember what that password is, because otherwise I'm never getting into that file again. So I'm going to go ahead and say encrypt. And notice that the icon changes. There, it just changed in the background. So it's got a little piece of paper with the padlock. And now when I try to launch this attachment, it's going to ask me for the password so I can get in. And if I type in some gibberish and say decrypt, it doesn't work. You have unlimited number of tries. So don't feel that you've got to nail it in the first 5 attempts and then you'll be permanently locked out. That's not the case. Like I said, it is case sensitive. Speaking of the word case, if I do lowercase B-I-L-L space M-U-R-R-A-Y, decrypt, it's not going to let me in. So now I'll spell it correctly, capital B-I-L-L-U-R-R-A-Y. So there I've spelled it correctly, and it gives me access to the document. I can launch this document. It's going to launch in Word, and there I'm right back into my file. And I will retain access to this file. So in other words, I can click away and come back for as long as this brain session is active. So I can click once again, and I'll go right into the file. As soon as I close the Brain app and relaunch it, then I'll need to decrypt or use my password to access that file again. And then finally, the last component today that I want to share with you is BrainBox. I love using BrainBox, and people that have discovered BrainBox, we get a lot of really great positive feedback on this particular feature. BrainBox is a way for you to collect data for your brain database to be filed later. Maybe you don't have the Brain currently open, or I don't have my Lore Bloom Brain open, my Holiday Brain open. I don't have any Brain open right now. I'm just on my Brain list, but I come across a website. Once again, I've got another monitor here. So I come across a website that I really like. Here's another t-shirt from this motorcycle company in Indiana. Love this, I want to add it into my Brain. What would you normally do? Launch the Brain, navigate to the correct Brain database, go to the correct area, the correct thought, and then drag and drop this over into the Brain. That's about 4 or 5 steps. I have installed the BrainBox, and the BrainBox is available on the Chrome extension. It's a Chrome extension. So if you go to the Chrome extension website, do a search for BrainBox, you'll find it. If you go to our website at thebrain.com, I'm just going to speed up and type in a search for BrainBox. I think it's thebrain.com/BrainBox. I'm sure it is. BrainBox, there it is. So here's information on installing on Firefox, Safari, Opera, Chrome, and so forth. Whoops, I just closed my browser. I like to use Chrome. So I've already installed. Why is it not opening? There it is. So I've got my t-shirt that I really like, and I click on the brain box icon. And notice it said added. You need to be logged into your Brain account so it knows what account to send this in, what BrainBox account to send this information to. I've got a few. I'm going to click on this. I love this coffee mug, and I think my brother-in-law would really like this as well. Don't have time to buy it right now. I'm just going to throw it into the Brain and take care of it later. So I'm going to click on BrainBox. I've added those 2 items to BrainBox. Files, I can right click on files, this Christmas tree document. I want to archive this. I want to save it in my Brain, not just import the data, but the file itself. I right click. And the BrainBox extension in a browser needs to be installed. However, for files, I just right click, send to BrainBox. As soon as you install the Brain 12, that feature will be there. Now, I don't have time to jump onto a Mac today to show you the differences. The browser extensions are the same, but for a file, you would click and drag the file to the Brain icon in your dock on a Mac machine, and that would add it into BrainBox. So great, this Excel spreadsheet, I select BrainBox, and now let's launch the Brain. Right here, there we go. So now that we launched the Brain, let me open the Brain back up. I'll get into the desired Brain. And here's my list of BrainBox. There you can see the Trek Rise and Shine mug is there, the Janus motorcycles. As soon as the sync kicks off, it'll grab that document that I just added. But regardless, now I can find the right area. I can take my time. You can see I've got a little bit of cleanup that I need to do in my BrainBox. I've got a lot of data there. But now I can take my time to say, all right, my holiday gifts, these are for friends. Well, one's for a friend, so I'll click, and the Janus motorcycle tee, I will create a new child thought, or I can add it to the existing. And I can also click and preview as well. But I know I want to add it here, so I'll click the plus sign under friends, and the Trek is for a family member. I go back, and notice it no longer then appears in my BrainBox list. As soon as you find a home for that thought, cleans it out of the BrainBox. And then this is also something I'm going to right click, change the thought type. I have not yet purchased that item. So there, I've found a home for those 2 thoughts. BrainBox is a really, really great way to get data over to the Brain that you want to classify or take care of later. And you can get to that. I don't think I'll have time today to open up my iPhone. I use that quite a bit when I'm just sort of browsing around on my iPhone. Use the share icon on a web page or a document or what have you, share and then send to BrainBox. And so you can send things to your BrainBox from your iPhone as well as accessing your entire Brain from your iPhone as well with the iOS app or an Android app. And with that, I want to thank everyone for joining me today. I'm going to close today with putting my elf hat back on. Want to thank you everyone for joining me for a very special holiday Brain 202 class. If you do have time, we're right at the end of the webinar today, but we're going to go in and answer some of the questions. Chase, if you want to join me on the call, let me know if there's any questions. I see quite a few. Chase had his hands full with the questions coming in today, but we can answer a couple of questions. If you don't have time to stick around, you can always contact us later, support@thebrain.com. Send us an email with any questions that you may have. But Chase, were there any additional features that came up today in the Q&A that you wanted me to demo today?
Yeah, just a few actually. One good one here was a question. If you have a markdown file that you've exported from another program, let's say, how could you import that into the Brain as a note for a thought, for instance?
Sure. A couple of different ways to do that. You saw me import today. I'm not going to go through the entire import once again. I thought it was over here. There it is. You saw me import today this Christmas Carol directory, and inside I had TXT files. So that this is the background of a Christmas Carol. So if I navigate back to book report, Christmas Carol, background. There is that TXT file. It loads right up and I can start editing that. A .md file will do the same thing, but we'll have all the features of the Brain markdown formatting available. There was one thought in here that had that under adaptations. I actually renamed this notes.md, but this could be anything.md. So I could say anything.md. And if it was just that one file it's a markdown file, I want to save it in the Brain, I can even just click and drag. And I actually moved that file just now into the Brain. That's my default setting for drag and drop into the Brain. But regardless, I've got this anything file and it just simply loads. It's a markdown file, so it loads right up. It's actually added as an attachment. So you can see I can close this and come back to the Brain note. The Brain note itself is named notes, plural, notes.md, notes.md, and then that'll be your default note for that thought if you drag and drop that into the Brain. But regardless, this was called anything.md. I can still edit this content and have all the different attributes for editing in the Brain. So if the MD file is part of a folder that you're importing, you'll have access to it. If it's just an individual markdown file that you like, you want to preserve in the Brain, so then you can start linking this up to other related thoughts and content. Just drag and drop it right into the Brain for easy access.
Great. And then one other one here was, how can you search for a term in a note that's somewhere in your Brain, but you're not exactly sure where?
Yes, absolutely. We did not cover search today, and I do cover search in my Brain 101 classes. So please feel free to join me for a Brain 101. We talk about the search. Search in the Brain is facilitated by your operating system's indexing capabilities. So what that means is on a Mac, we tap into Spotlight. And on a Windows machine, we are using Windows Desktop Search. Wherever your Brain data is stored, as long as that directory is being indexed by your operating system, then all of your notes, all of your file attachments, even links to files. So if you've got a shortcut to a Word document or to an Excel spreadsheet, that is being indexed by your operating system and shows up in your search report. So here you can see is the word, we're just going to look at Dickens. So if I do a search, if I'm looking for Charles Dickens, I type that in and there's a thought for Charles Dickens, but here's adaptations. And here it is, anything.md on the thought named anything shows up in my search results. I just created this moments ago. But not only that, when I hover over all of my search results, I can actually see a preview that pops up. This is a new feature in the Brain 12. So I just need to hover over that thought and I get a preview of where that search criteria shows up in that content. And when I go to that thought, you can see it's still highlighted within the node itself. So I searched for the word Dickens, and here my Christmas Carol review document is wherever the word Dickens shows up in that note. So it's all being indexed by your operating system and therefore searchable from within the Brain.
Perfect. And that was pretty much it for the questions that I had here for you.
Fantastic. Well, thank you everyone for and I'm just seeing another question. Can you sync thoughts in 2 or more brains? So just to be clear, when you're using multiple brains, you know, there are pros and cons and it's whatever works best for you. When I'm doing a search, I'm just searching through thoughts within this brain. I didn't find references to content in other brains that I have. I guess maybe that's sort of one disadvantage to having multiple smaller topic specific brains. It's not a universal search, it's just searching through that content. And each sync is individual as well. I think the question that came in from Rich was about syncing. You know, I could sync this brain and the other brain, the copy of this area that I created today in my holiday brain. I have not synced that yet. Notice the icon in my brain thumbnails, my list of all available brains. You can't really see it there. It's got some radio signals. They look like this. That means it's local, it's online, but it's also syncing to the Brain cloud. This one is local only. It's got a little computer icon. So that's just a local copy. If I scroll down, I probably have brains that are cloud only. So that brain is out in the cloud. I haven't downloaded this as a local copy yet. So syncing is individual per brain. It's up to you if you decide to sync it up to the cloud and then thus sync it off to other machines. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining me today for the Brain 202, a very special holiday webinar. And it's always a pleasure to share these more advanced features of the Brain with individuals and longtime users of the Brain, newer features as well of the Brain 12. Again, everything was on the Brain 12 today that was demoed. So if you're still running the Brain 11, I encourage you to check out the Brain 12 on our website. And again, also, if you do have additional questions about a feature I still didn't get a chance to cover today, or something you want to know more about in detail, we're happy to hear from you. support@thebrain.com, send us an email. And also, when you visit our website, if you see a little name pop up and Matt is checking in with you or Chase is checking in with you, that's really me. That's really Chase, not a bot. So we're always, online during business hours, and we're usually online during not business hours, but we're happy to chat with you and answer any additional questions that you may have. Feel free to reach out. Thanks so much for joining me today. If you'd like in the future, join a Brain 101 as a refresher as well, and keep in touch with our website as far as upcoming webinars that we have coming up in the new year. Have a safe and healthy and happy holiday, everyone out there. Happy holidays from all of us at the Brain Technologies. Enjoy the holiday season, and as always, enjoy your brain. Thanks, everyone. Bye.